It's Friday, August 23rd, 2024. Let's take a look at the headlines making waves in the Nigerian dailies of today. Beginning with the Punch. The Boda headline says, landowners sue federal government over 15 trillion naira Lagos-Calabar highway. You can turn to page 2 of the paper for the full story. And above the nameplate, Dangote Refinery begins petrol production test run. The full story is found on page 21 of the paper. And on page 7, Tinubu cut short France trip, swears in CJN today. Page 21, NNPC directors' expenses jump by 214%, says the report. And beside the nameplate, Labour Party denies APC alliance 1.6 billion naira offer. You can turn to page 7 of the paper to get the full story. And on page 30, APC campaign builds on lies, says PDP. And below the picture on page 29, Minister writes Finance Ministry over SSANU, NASU withheld salaries. And on page 4 and 5, 6 NSAS protesters freed after 4 years detention. Page 11, bandits kill 13 Niger farmers, allege leaked information. Away from the Punch, let's take a look at Daily Trust, where the Boda headline says, Kaduna villagers accuse soldiers of killing 3 persons, 100 cows. You can turn to page 4 of the paper to get the full story. And below the nameplate on page 3, North Central members insist on APC chairmanship. Kano water contract scam. 3 local government chairmen in agency's custody. You can turn to page 5 of the paper to get the full story. And on page 25, National Hospital plans VIP section for presidents. And below the picture, curfew in Sokoto community as youth protest killing of district head. You can turn to page 6 of the newspaper to get the full story. And on page 7, Chinese firm seizes another Nigeria's jet in Canada. And on page 24, Israeli forces kill 42 Palestinians in fresh attacks. And before we go, take a look at page 16. How NTA driver was stabbed to death in Abuja. Away from Daily Trust, let's take you to The Guardian, where the Boda headline says, insurgency in Northeast. Thousands in dire straits as supports dry up in border towns. Can turn to page 4 and 5 for the big story. And below the picture, don't destroy PDP. Dele Momodu wants as party's crisis worsens. Can turn to page 6 for the story. And below that, Rwanda completes $783 million Ajib acquisition deal. The story is found on business page 18 of The Guardian. And on page 3, knocks for immigration over passport fee hike. And beside that, federal government fumes as terrorists kill 12 abduct minors in Niger. The full story is found on page 29 of the paper. Tinubu to swear in Kekereekun as Ariwola retires. You can turn to page 3 of the paper for the full story. And on page 8, court discharges 6 NSAS protesters after 4 years. And below that, Omole launches foundation to promote ethical standards. You can turn to page 27 of the paper to get the full story. And on page 6, Chinese firm continues seizure spree with another Nigerian jet in Canada. The very last for today is Vanguard, where the Boda headline says, end bad governance, release detained protesters now. And you can turn to page 5 of the paper to get the full story. Above the nameplate, Nigeria's trade surplus rises 145% to $8.26 billion. You can turn to page 19 of the paper to get the full story. And below that on page 9, State House 2025 budget will be on actual requirements, says the presidency. And on page 9 also, NBA asks judges to revive public trust. Ajairo's police summons. Obi cautions federal government as Nupeng puts oil workers on red alert. You can turn to page 8 of the Vanguard to get the full story. And below the picture, federal government molds different tariff to stimulate demand, says Power Minister Adelabu. You can turn to page 20 of the paper to get the full story. And on the sports page 31, Team Nigeria arrive Paris, promise podium performance. And that's all we'll be looking at on the headlines making waves in the Nigerian dailies of today. If any of these headlines caught your attention, do well to get a copy of the paper and read the full story on the identified pages.